Hey carnivores, SB fam, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Bella the Steak and Butter Gal. I hope you all are having a meat-fueled, fantastic day. As always, drop a comment down below and let me know how you all are doing on your carnivore journeys. Today's video features Dr. Fit and Fabulous, also known as Dr. Jamie Seeman. She is an OBGYN and she is a passionate advocate of the keto, low carb, and the carnivore diet. We explore all of the topics to do with female hormone health, pregnancy, and exactly what may be causing hair loss and hair thinning. I also bring on my female coaches, Coach Emily Harvo and Coach Sally Bowers, to chime in on this conversation that is so focused on female health, carnivore diet, and fitness. Make sure to watch to the very end because Dr. Jamie talks in detail about hidden toxic chemicals. A lot of these toxic chemicals we don't even know we're using and ingesting, and these can really be affecting our results, as well as our likelihood of developing cancer. So I'm very glad that I can collaborate with Thrive Market to bring you guys an alternative source for home goods, personal items, and groceries. Before I invite on these awesome ladies, I did want to announce that Dr. Jamie Seeman will be one of the guest speakers in my next Carnivore Challenge. And as you can see on the screen, I will be featuring Dr. Jamie Seeman as a guest speaker, as well as Dr. Kendi Berry, Ben Azadi, and Dr. Elizabeth Bright. So if you would like to attend each of these guests' exclusive live Q&As within the Steak and Butter Gang community, have the ability to submit your personal questions for each of these guests, and have access to the playbacks to each of these guest Q&As, make sure to sign up for the next February Carnivore Challenge at the URL shown on the screen, sbgmeetup.com, or click the links down below in the description box for more details and to directly sign up. So without further ado, let me bring on my guest, Dr. Fit and Fabulous, also known as Dr. Jamie Seeman. How are you today?
It's so good to be here. This is wonderful. Thank you for the invitation. Seriously.
So do introduce yourself real quick. How did you come onto this journey towards low carb and animal based?
Oh, well, it's an interesting journey. I honestly never thought I would be sitting here right now. So the story is that way before I became a doctor, I grew up in the Midwest and grew up in the 80s and 90s. I was an athlete, so I was competing in lots of sports, but I was eating what you would call standard American diet in the 80s and 90s, a lot of hamburger helper and maybe without the hamburger even sometimes, pastaroni. I mean, I remember these were staples in our home growing up. After I left high school, I went to college and competed as a collegiate athlete and was actually pursuing a degree in nutrition and exercise science. Met my husband in college and was very active, obviously, as a collegiate athlete, lifting a lot of weights, trying to eat the best diet that I could. And then I graduated college and went to medical school. And this was the first time in my life where I went from being very active to suddenly being very sedentary, sitting in classrooms for long periods, and was really starting to struggle with my weight. Well, I had a degree in nutrition, right? So I thought all I have to do is count calories. So I literally was keeping a food journal, tracking my food. I was counting my pretzels because they're low fat. I was counting my goldfish crackers, and I was somewhat successful. But this was the first challenge for me, when it came to my health. And I think that we have this resiliency in our teens and 20s that, we kind of take for granted that catches up with us, with time. My husband and I wanted to start a family. So I got pregnant with my first daughter, and I subsequently had 3 children in 56 months. So my girls I have 3 daughters. They're 23 months apart. So talk about physiologic stress on the body, 3 pregnancies in successive fashion. And I failed my glucose testing during these pregnancies. And I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism after my first daughter was born and had to go on thyroid medication. But before I got pregnant with my first daughter, I'd been on birth control for many years during college. And when I came off birth control, I was not having periods. And my doctor said, I think you have PCOS. She started me on metformin. The only thing I knew is if patients with PCOS lost 10% of their body weight, you could usually restore ovulation. So I went on a very caloric restrictive diet of basically iceberg lettuce and cottage cheese. That was my way of making a salad with some sunflower seeds. And that was what I ate in the hospital for many days. And then actually I got pregnant the next month my head doctor had sent in a prescription for an ovulation medicine called Clomid. So anyway, I got pregnant. I had all these pregnancies. And after my third daughter was born, I asked my doctor to check a hemoglobin A1C because my father and my mother are both normal BMI diabetics. And I was very concerned about failing these glucose tests and what was going on with my thyroid. And I was diagnosed with prediabetes. Well, that was a huge eye-opening thing for me to think, gosh, if anybody looked at a picture of me right now, I didn't look really obese. I would consider myself a little overweight. My BMI, I think, was like 26. But to be sitting here, as a patient, to be told you have prediabetes and thyroid dysfunction, and these are 2 things that I treat very regularly. And I ask patients all day to eat healthy and work out and do all these things. And I thought, gosh, I feel like such a fraud. I mean, how do I not have the tools to prevent these conditions, in my own health? And so I really made a decision that day that I was just going to start being the example for my patients. And so I kind of set out on a journey of really diving back into the literature. What did we really know about nutrition and how are patients really supposed to eat? And I really started to come around to this idea that, we might be wrong. And so I started with a Whole30 diet. Then I did paleo. Then I finally kind of settled on keto. And then in 2018, it really transitioned into more of a carnivore type lifestyle, which is kind of what my husband and I eat today. We're not strict carnivores by any means, but it's a very heavy animal-based diet. And, through that process for me in my own health, I no longer have pre-diabetes. My A1C is the lowest it's ever been. I'm off thyroid medication. My husband's migraines are gone. He no longer has seasonal allergies. We can list all the amazing, things that have happened to us. But what I realized is that our medical system it's not equipped with the tools to help people. It's just not, I had a degree in nutrition and a medical degree, and I was confused, about things. And so along my health journey, I started a social media account and really just started sharing my journey with people. And that's where Dr. Fit and Fabulous was born. But it's now catapulted into, a book and a podcast and speaking engagements. And I spend a ton of my time outside of my clinic doing it because I feel like it is the most effective way to reach the most amount of people.
You are an icon of strength, beauty, professionalism. How do you balance that? Are you spending more time in clinic? Are you spending more time with social media and your book? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So I am a full-time practicing OBGYN. So I see patients in clinic Monday through Thursday. From 8 to 5. And then Fridays is my day out of clinic, but that's the day that I typically spend recording podcasts and working on my book and maybe, doing stuff with my children. And then my 3 kids, of course, are at an age now that they're very busy with activities. Time is definitely my most valuable asset at this moment. But, I feel like we all have the same 24 hours in a day and we all decide how to spend those hours. I do things that are important to me that fill my cup. I have always been somebody that says, pay yourself first. And I wake up every morning and my workout gets done in the morning because over the course of the day, I might have a patient come in labor, a kid might have something going on. So my workout happens at the beginning of the day. Do a lot of meal prepping and planning. We are always encountering something called decision fatigue. And I find that when patients have decision fatigue, they're most likely to make the easiest decision, which is usually like fast food or a drive-through or something like that. So, I try to prioritize the things that are important to me. I also find that really when you take care of yourself, when you eat right, when you sleep right, when you can de-stress correctly, when you create this resiliency in your life, you're able to do so much more. When people say, I don't know how you do it, it's like, okay, listen, I love my life. I wake up every single day. I want my life. I want no one else's life. When you are living a life like that with purpose and passion and you take care of yourself and your brain's working and your brain's just on fire, it just happens. I mean, sometimes when people say, I don't know how you do it, I'm like, I don't know how I do it either. I do it, right? I just wake up and I do what I can and I don't stress about the things that I can't. It's probably not the life that some people would choose to lead, but it's mine and we get to make our own stories.
You truly are such a great role model, especially for women like me, where I'm 26. And when I put myself out there on social media, I always get questions and DMs saying, but how can you possibly not eat carbs? Don't you need carbs for happy, healthy hormones and a regular cycle? So what would you say to that type of question?
Patients come in all the time and say, how do I balance my hormones? It's like this mythical unicorn thing, right? In women. And I don't like the word balance because everything in our body is connected. Every system is connected. Our thyroid talks to our brain, it talks to our muscles, our heart talks to, right? Everything is talking to everything. So I kind of like the word harmony. Diet is one part of hormone harmony. Exercise is another part. Sleep is definitely, a part of it. Resiliency from stress, emotional, psychological, biopsychosocial. All of these things play a role in our hormones. So it's not just about nutrition, but we'll focus on that because that was your question. So in women who are menstruating and women who are in their years of fertility, so they've started their periods and they have not yet gone through menopause, we are reproductive creatures. So our body has all these nutrient sensing pathways, and it is a requisite for mammalian life to have these nutrient sensing pathways because our body is saying every single month, is this a good time to reproduce? And if it says, oh, if it has an emergency or a red flag somewhere, it will say this is not a good time to reproduce. Hormone levels will start to, go awry. Ovulation won't occur. Problems start to happen. And it can happen through any of these mechanisms, through stress, through not enough sleep, through poor nutrition. So when we think about how nutrition impacts our hormones, well, our sex hormones, they're sex steroid hormones. So estrogen, testosterone, progesterone are sex hormones, and they're actually all made from cholesterol. So to physically make these hormones, we need adequate amounts of fat and cholesterol, either produced by the body or from the diet. So this is where we know low-fat diets can be very dangerous. There's lots of studies that show, and I've taken care of course, the bodybuilder population. So low-fat diet with low body fat, that's even a super double whammy. And many of these women don't menstruate. They have lots of problems going on due to low body fat and low dietary fat, because where's the fat supposed to come from, right? And so we need adequate amounts of fatty acids in the diet. And then we think about protein. Well, a lot of our hormones are actually made from protein as well. So our sex hormones are made from fat, but there are definitely lots of other hormones in the body that are made from protein. So we need adequate amounts of these amino acids. And then we also need other nutrients like B vitamins and magnesium and all these other things that keep the systems running. And so protein and fat are really important for that. So then where do carbohydrates come in?
Yeah.
So when we look, at these three macronutrients, carbohydrates would be the only one that would not be essential for mammalian life. We do have the ability to make all the carbs that we need to live off of protein and fat substrates. Now, does that mean that zero carb is the best answer for every single person? Maybe not. We definitely all come from different genetic backgrounds, different epigenetic changes that have happened in our lifetime. And so we do know that there's definitely some people that thrive in a ketogenic state and some that don't tolerate it as well. And so that's where we have to kind of be our own expert. Now, when it comes to, how many carbohydrates, should we eat? It's always the $1 million question for pregnancy, right? Because what's good for a pregnant patient is probably good for all of us. But in pregnancy, we tell women that the minimum threshold is 175 grams of carbs. But in pregnancy, this is a different physiologic state than outside of pregnancy. And we obviously have extra glucose requirements because of the maternal body getting bigger and the fetus's needs and all these other things. But the important thing here that we're talking about when it comes to carbohydrates is normal glucose levels. So carbohydrate intake should be titrated to a level where a patient has normal glucose levels and normal insulin levels. So back to your original question, if a patient can consume 50, 75, 150 carbohydrates in the diet, obviously coming from whole food sources, fruits, vegetables, maybe even whole grains, if they can maintain normal blood sugar levels and normal insulin levels, more power to you. I think that's fine. That's going to create a hormonal milieu that is good for a patient. If it creates hyperglycemia or hyperinsulinemia, then that causes a problem. Back to the issue of zero carb, there could be patients where consistently relying on gluconeogenesis or glycogenolysis could be perceived as a stressful state for a patient. And it sometimes could increase cortisol, especially if they get electrolyte depleted or sodium depleted, which can happen when patients start a ketogenic diet. So that's the most broad level answer that I can give you, is that it is a carbohydrate intake that allows normal glycemia, normal insulin levels. And we always use the menstrual cycle in these patients as a vital sign because it tells us that we're doing something right. And when it's gone or it's abnormal or irregular or periods are heavy, then there's definitely something we're not doing right.
I have been carnivore for 2 years as of February 1st. And I have Hashimoto. And I had a lot of weight to lose. And through, the steak and butter gang, I've lost quite a bit. And the Hashimoto is on its way out the door, so I'm very, very happy. I used to lose hair by the handfuls. It was horrible. What can you tell me about hair regrowth and how long could it take?
It's a lot to unpack, but basically one thing we have to remember is that when patients shift a diet, they're going to start a carnivore diet or just even any sort of diet that involves weight loss or caloric restriction, it can trigger telogen effluvium. So basically the body says, okay, you're only going to give me 1,800 calories. Cool. I'm going to keep all your systems running, but your hair's got to go.
Oh.
And so we have about 90% of the hairs on our head are in something called anagen phase. So growth phase, and growth phase can last anywhere from 3 to probably 8 years. When you have a stressful event, it can kick some of those hairs out of growth phase into what is kind of a resting phase called catagen and then telogen. And then once it's a telogen hair, it's a ticking time clock for it to fall out. So we normally only have about 100 hairs a day falling out. But if you have this stressful event that kicks a bunch of hairs into telogen phase, you can have this excessive shedding called telogen effluvium. You can see it in the drain. There's like way more than 100 hairs coming out per day. If it's an acute cause, so if it's, something stressful, like you're going through a divorce or maybe even losing 100 pounds, but once you reverse the trigger of it and the weight is stable or the ex-husband is long gone or whatever it is, then these hairs will shift back into anagen and they'll start growing again. But we have to remember that hairs they only grow about 6 inches per year. So, if you have long hair, it could really take a long time to kind of start to notice that regrowth. For me, I was joking in a story, I feel like a chia pet because I definitely have a lot of tiny short hairs in here, but like down here, it was much thinner. And so the difficult part is with long hair, it can take a long time. If you have beautiful hair like Bella's, it would take a long time to see that regrowth. There definitely are a lot of other things that can cause what we call chronic telogen effluvium. So thyroid disorders like Hashimoto's and autoimmune diseases can just be this constant trigger of just moving these anagen hairs into telogen phase. There definitely are nutrient deficiencies, typically protein and fat. So once again, carbs are not required for hair growth. And then certain vitamins. So we always biotin. Every single hair vitamin has biotin in it. And so biotin, copper, there are some other things important for hair growth. But your question was, how do I regrow hair? So I would say the most compelling evidence that we have now would be to not be in a caloric deficit, be getting adequate amounts of protein and fatty acids in the diet. And I would say red light therapy can be super helpful. And what red light therapy does is our scalp, these little mini organ hair complexes, so at the bottom of each follicle, it can absorb red light rays and it helps the mitochondria within that hair follicle start to create more ATP so that it can grow the hair again. And so that's why red light therapy is really helpful for regrowth of hair. And studies show it can increase hair follicle counts by 24, maybe even 30%. So that's awesome because I'll tell you, going through this, I tried lots of serums and even like Rogaine. It is a pain to put these things on your head and they all come with side effects. Like Rogaine in particular can cause excessive shedding in the first 2 weeks. And when you stop using it, the hair will just go back into telogen phase. So I love red light therapy. That can be really helpful as an adjunct to facilitate growth. And then a newer treatment like PRP treatment, which is basically taking your own blood, spinning down the plasma and having somebody inject the plasma into the scalp, that can really help with regrowth too. And it's your own stem cells, that you're using. But if you are patient, a lot of times with time, it will come back. Now there are age-related changes where the hair follicle starts to miniaturize. So the shafts get a lot smaller, which can be perceived as thinning. And so there are some changes like that. Androgenic alopecia, which is associated with like PCOS patients or people, it was in one of my posts, people taking testosterone therapy that's not managed well. There's so many things that could be exacerbating it. And of course you get something like COVID, it could kick you back into it. So there's just so many things that can cause it, but it is really, hair is an identity for us, culturally. And even in breast cancer studies, patients are more distressed by losing their hair than they are about losing their breasts. So I totally hear what you're saying. It's true. But, optimize the diet, try some of these other modalities, and most of all, just be patient because you can get some regrowth.
You all can learn from Dr. Jamie Seeman and submit your questions for her in the Steak and Butter Gang. She will be a guest speaker alongside Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Elizabeth Bright, and Ben Azadi. So if you don't want to miss their exclusive live Q&As, make sure to sign up at SBG Meetup or at the links down below in the description box. You will also have access to 8 hours of live Zoom calls every single week with my team of coaches. You can submit your questions, what you need help on, and the coaches will answer in each live Zoom call. In addition to that, you will have access to the full 90-day fat loss program. Just take a look at some of the amazing results our members have gotten by following Coach Raymond and Coach Emily's fat loss program. Again, for more details, just go to sbgmeetup.com or check out the links down below in the description box.
Absolutely. I mean, we see this so much in our members, and it usually comes with under eating is when we see it. We see them lose their period. Yeah. And many of us just absolutely thrive on what you're talking about. We're using our other systems to get our glucose in that correct spot. And so that's something that we see. That's a question we get all the time, is that, is this a legitimate, safe thing for pregnancy and for lactation?
So back to the idea of caloric restriction, that's those nutrient sensing pathways. So body says, not a lot of food coming in, probably not a good time to try to grow another human. So long-term caloric restriction absolutely can cause problems with dysregulation of the hormonal cycle and sometimes not ovulating. The question we always have to be asking, and we don't have a great way to measure this, is even if a patient has normal glucose levels on their diet, let's say they have a CGM on or they're poking their finger, we always have to ask at the cost of what amount of insulin. Because patients might say, well, I'm eating 200 carbs a day and my blood sugars look normal. I passed the glucose test. And then they develop preeclampsia and they get sick during the delivery, right? So we always have to say at what cost of insulin, because insulin will continue to rise to normalize the blood glucose levels until severe insulin resistance happens, and then glucose levels will come up. And so when it comes to pregnancy, anecdotally, I definitely have had pregnant patients on a carnivore diet. Don't have a lot of data. We observe these patients. I have had some patients with larger babies, probably due to lots of fatty acids. So we know that both glucose and fatty acids cross the placenta very freely, but they have done very well, had nice, healthy pregnancies. I've had patients who have been on a standard American diet, developed gestational diabetes, and we've used a low-carb diet to improve blood sugar control. And I've had patients that have had to go all the way down to 50 grams of carbohydrates to achieve normal glucose levels, where with the standard treatment of gestational diabetes, we would have told this patient, no less than 175. You're going to eat, 40 carbs per meal, and then a couple snacks that are 5 to 10 carbs, right? So this woman would be eating 175 carbs. She would have never achieved normal glucose levels. We would have had to start her on metformin, glyburide, or insulin. And so, that's the tough part about these recommendations, is that they could be doing harm for some patients that truly require a lower carbohydrate threshold to achieve normal glucose levels. So I think every pregnant patient has to kind of figure out where that is for her. There's definitely people that can, thrive in a low carb state. Is it zero for everybody? Probably not. But once again, the goal is normal glucose and normal insulin, especially in pregnancy, because we do have really good data that shows high glucose levels and high insulin levels actually cause epigenetic changes within the baby that lead to long-term risks and health outcomes for the baby and the mom.
You have a book called Hard to Kill. I would love for you to share those 5 pillars of how we can become hard to kill.
Hard to Kill encompasses basically what I think are the foundational principles of how you live your life. The thing I want people to understand is that we don't know how much time we have. We live our lives thinking that we just have unlimited time, right? That is the idea of procrastination. I'll start on Monday. I'll do it this. You don't know. I mean, the truth of this is I could come off this recording and die in a car accident tonight. I don't mean to sound like really, doom and gloom, but this is just, the reality. And so if you live by these 5 pillars, if you do these things right, you're going to have an amazing life, because you're going to have the energy to connect with other awesome humans and to pursue the things that you want to pursue. If you don't do these things, you're going to be easy to kill. You're going to spend a lot of time in and out of doctors' offices, taking lots of medications and not really live a great life. And so the 5 pillars, the first one is nutrition. So nutrition is something we do every single day. And the principles in this pillar is essentially eating within a caloric range that is appropriate, understanding that caloric restriction does actually increase lifespan and longevity, but we don't want to be in a chronically caloric restricted state, right? So finding that middle ground, getting adequate amounts of protein and fat in the diet, because those are the macronutrients required for us to live, and then moderating carbohydrates to a level that you feel and function well and have normal biomarkers. Pretty simple. Eating whole foods. So I basically say if it grew in the ground or if it had a mother, those are the rules to live by. Okay, so then the second pillar is movement. So our bodies were designed to do physically hard things. But we live in a world where we drive cars and we've got Uber Eats. We can like just get the food delivered right to our house, right? We don't have to physically work for a lot in our everyday lives. And so the problem is that we're very much, when it comes to exercise, and we're very addicted to cardio exercise. Women are told to just get on the treadmill, get on the elliptical. And I'm not saying that that kind of exercise isn't good for our bodies. There's definitely some benefit to what we call zone 2 cardio. But if you want to be hard to kill, you want a body composition that has a lot of lean body mass, a lot of lean tissue, and an appropriate amount of body fat. And we have just been sold this, weight and BMI thing, even within medicine, and it's not telling the whole picture. There's so many people that are normal weight, but they're under muscled and they're over fat. And so if you want to have good metabolic health, you want a lot of lean muscle tissue. And the way to do that is to do resistance training. And the other way to stimulate great autophagy and to be hard to kill is to do sprint training, because as we age, we lose our fast twitch muscle fibers, which is why it's hard for your grandparents to get up out of a chair. They have to rock, they have to push on the sides of the chair because they've lost those fast twitch muscle fibers. So as we age, we need to be doing some sprinting. We need to be doing some weightlifting. The third pillar is sleep. And sleep is something that we think is so passive. We think we just lay down, put the head on the pillow and close our eyes, and like this magical thing called sleep happens. But sleep actually is all part of our circadian rhythm. So the presence or absence of sunlight. And we live inside buildings and houses where we're not getting natural sunlight. We're not getting those normal inputs from the sun. We're living kind of this like high-paced, caffeinated world, and we're drinking alcohol and we're eating crappy diets and we're not sleeping well. And we know that people who are sleep deprived have massively increased rates of heart disease and cancers. And so people need to start sleeping better. And that starts with starting to get good sleep during the day. And that doesn't mean sleeping during the day. That means when you wake up in the morning, getting morning sunlight in your eyes, eating a good diet, getting some midday sun, getting some evening sun, not drinking alcohol, not overuse of caffeinated beverages and things like that. And then practicing what I call sleep hygiene. So making sure the bedroom is only for sleep and sex, making sure the bedroom isn't too hot, because our bodies actually cool down when we sleep. So we want our bedrooms to be about 70 degrees or less. We don't want to be wearing too many clothes. We don't want TVs or a lot of blue light in the bedroom. We don't want a lot of noise. There's a lot of things where you can just create an environment for yourself that gives you a better opportunity for quality sleep. And then obviously quantity too. Most people need on average about 7 hours. Some people less, some people more. And that is definitely based on the individual. And then the fourth pillar is kind of what I call stress resilience. So mind and body resilience. So from a physical aspect, I kind of mentioned that you can use small amounts of stressors to create physical resiliency. So like sauna, cold therapy, we dive into that in this pillar, but also mental resilience, because I think the secret sauce for anybody listening on here is a lot of people can tell us exactly what they're supposed to do. Oh, Bella, I know, just eat steak and eggs. You've told me 100 times, like do exercise, right? Like they all know what they're supposed to do, but who is the person who actually accomplishes something super awesome, like getting rid of their diabetes and losing 100 pounds versus the person that's tried and failed 6 or 7 times? Yeah. We have studied this, and the people that make these massive changes in their life, they of course do have grit and they have discipline, right? They made a decision not to quit. But what these people say is they needed a new identity. Oh. And when I was very tired and on the couch living with prediabetes and hypothyroidism, this whole Dr. Fit and Fabulous thing was kind of like my new identity. And the reason that this identity thing matters is because our internal language inside of our brains, that language inside the brain is what drives action. And action in our daily life is what gives us outcomes. And so if you never go back to changing that internal language, if you say, I'm fat, I have Hashimoto's, that's why I can't lose weight. And I see this every day with patients. They become a victim of their diagnoses. And that is that internal language. And that just perpetuates these actions that are not helping them and not serving them. So you have to change the identity within the mind to say, no, I'm strong and I'm powerful and I'm beautiful and I'm hard to kill. Part of the book, we have this little like mantra that people have to read to themselves. They stand in front of a mirror and like read it to themselves, and it sounds so stupid. And you feel really silly when you do it. But this helps change that internal language. So this pillar kind of dives into how you can do that, how you can have more mindfulness in your life, all of these things. And then the fifth pillar is what I like to call people, places, and things. So the people in your life, we know that we do things like the people around us. There's something in the brain called mirror neurons, which means monkey see, monkey do. So you hang out with these 5 people and you do what they do. So you have to take an audit of the people in your life, because if you want to be fit, maybe you should go hang out at the gym with the fit people, do what they do. I had somebody tell me one time, if you want to own a yacht, go down to the yacht club and do what the yacht owners do. The next part is places. So literally, physically, the places that we live. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska right now. So we have a specific air quality, soil quality, water quality, like whatever it is, the climate I live in, how much sunlight I'm getting. Because in Nebraska, we are in a place where we don't get the right UV level at the latitude we live at. I have to be outside for excessive amounts of time in the winter to get enough vitamin D. So this impacts our health. Just something to think about. And then the last thing is things. And so this is like drinking out of stainless steel and glass instead of plastic water bottles, or the cosmetics that we use, all the products that we use. You know, you can have the most dialed in diet and be throwing around heavy weights and sleeping good, and then slathering yourself in toxic chemicals and all this stuff all day long, and then develop some kind of cancer. So these are just things that we have to acknowledge. And that is the summary of the 5 pillars. And it's just to start incorporating those things into your life, to be hard to kill, because something one day is going to take me out, and that's okay. You know, but just being grateful for each day that we're given, and that we get 24 hours to choose what we want to do with.
We have a call every week on Friday nights, and we almost renamed the call Mirror Neurons. It's a call that we, you know, Bella, she gives prizes when people share. It's just a time where we share wins. And so, you know, our group is 100% carnivore group for the most part. And so people are just sharing health wins because their blood sugar is coming under control and they're healing in so many different ways. Everything is healing in their bodies. And so we have this 1 hour meeting where people are just sharing, you know, with their experiences that have happened. And the mirror neurons that happen during that call, everybody just lights up and brings it up a level. So it was just so exciting when you mentioned that concept. We're always getting this question about how can I stimulate autophagy, which kind of ties into the reverse aging. What are some of the things that we can do to reverse the clock? How do those things tie in?
A lot of aging that happens in our body is through reactive oxygen species. So we know, for instance, that ketosis is very helpful at reducing the oxidative burden on our bodies by burning a ketone body as opposed to burning a molecule of glucose. There are less free radicals made. The other thing is that carbohydrates in the diet, excessive amounts of carbohydrates, you can have more glycation. So something called advanced glycation end products, which of course, age is what that's, you know, when you put those together, it spells age. And so these are things that age us. So, you know, oxidative stress, glycation. So it's not just about autophagy when we think about aging, but other things that stimulate autophagy, exercise, and is amazing at stimulating autophagy. So moving our bodies or doing weightlifting or high intensity interval training, I have definitely reincorporated that into my life. When I left, you guys can see this trophy back here. I was a 2-time lifter of the year when I was a collegiate athlete at Nebraska, but I vowed to never lift another weight when I left because I, you know, had a little dysmorphia about, you know, a female body and women being strong. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to like put on my skinny jeans and, you know, not lift weights anymore. And so I started to exercise again when I was changing my diet, but I was doing like bar classes, you know, like Pure Bar or whatever. And it wasn't until 2018 that I started lifting weights again. And I've realized now how important resistance training is for anti-aging, because muscle is a great reservoir for exercise-induced glucose uptake. So if you like to eat and you like to eat carbs, it'd be great to have a ton of muscle, right? That's why these bodybuilders can be on like 400 carbs a day, because they have boatloads of muscle, but the average American doesn't. And so exercise resistance training is a great way to stimulate autophagy, not just for the autophagy effect, but because our exercise and our actually squeezing the muscle, we secrete myokines that talk to our brain. They increase BDNF. They literally help with neurosynapsis and neuroplasticity. There's so many other benefits to that. I mean, you can't find a study that says exercise is bad other than it takes a little bit of your time. So there's definitely other ways to stimulate autophagy. And then, you know, other hormetic stresses. So like sauna use, cold water therapy. There's so many other ways that we can kind of put just a small amount of stress into the body so that it builds resiliency. But I mean, I will say, you know, on my journey of starting to change my diet in 2015, I mean, I do feel like I have had some like reverse aging. I mean, just when you look at pictures of my skin, like it was so much duller. I've not had plastic surgery in my face, but I have done microneedling and PRP. And I do think that that has made a difference too. And I think that is definitely the future of medicine, using exosomes and stem cells and using our own cells. It's going to be really cool to see, what we come up with in the next 10, 15 years. But definitely you have to control the things you can control, which is nutrition, because we do it multiple times a day, incorporating some resistance training, and getting good sleep. Lack of sleep will definitely age you. So
I thought I would share with you guys where I love to shop for cheap, high quality carnivore ingredients, and that is Thrive Market. So what I always order from them are their animal fats. This one is their Thrive Market ghee. They have unsalted and salted, and it is literally just organic, unsalted, clarified butter. That's it. Another great source of fat for those who cannot really tolerate butter and ghee is tallow. So this comes in a nice glass jar, and the brand is called Fatworks. It is pure tallow. They market as premium cooking oil, but this would be great just to add to all of your meals, solid, straight from the jar for extra fat. Regarding cleaning and home supplies and avoiding toxic chemicals, their Rosy line is perfect. None of their products in this line includes any harsh chemicals, dyes, or harsh fragrances that could irritate. I like their laundry detergent powder. I've also tried their liquid laundry detergent, but this is way more cost effective. I also love their dish detergent, again from their Rosy line. If you guys are interested in checking out Thrive Market, it's basically just an online membership based grocery store. They often have really great sales and offers, and I always stock up on my go-to things. Another great thing is that you can filter out certain diets that you are not interested in. In my case, I filter out any vegan diet, standard American diet crap, and I just set the filter to keto diet. They don't have a carnivore diet filter, but a lot of the keto results are perfectly carnivore friendly. They have popular brands like Redmond's Real Salt, Chomps, Element, and great carnivore snacks like pork rinds, wisps, and so on. So if you guys are interested in doing a quick shopping spree at Thrive, you can go to the URL shown on the screen, thrivemarket.com/steakandbuttergal for 30% off your first box and a free gift worth up to $60. I have also linked the URL down below in the description box if you want a clickable link. So you mentioned, Dr. Jamie, the toxic chemicals that may be giving us cancer. So now that's all I'm thinking about. So what exactly maybe I am not aware that I'm using every single day that could be causing harm? Could you maybe talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So in the United States, in most of our textile industries, we're allowed to use things that are banned in other countries, and some of them are known carcinogens. Another huge burden that we have is with plastics. And it's crazy when you start thinking about where these things are in our life. One that was mind-blowing to me when I was doing a lot of research a number of years ago was thermal receipt paper. Just grabbing the receipt from the grocery store. And if you put alcohol hand sanitizer on your hands before or after you touch the thermal receipt paper, it increases the absorption of the BPA in the thermal receipt paper tenfold. Now, there'll be somebody who listens to this and says, oh, no. Thermal receipt paper, they knew about the BPA, they changed it. Well, what textile industries are doing now is everybody knows how bad BPA is, so they take it out and they just inserted it for a different chemical. So, the unfortunate part, like the fast food wrappers that our food is wrapped in, or the plastic containers that even, you get hamburger patties in the drive-thru. I want 6 hamburger patties, right? They put it in that freaking plastic dish with the hot hamburger patties. So there's just so many things that we know are not only, carcinogens, but they can be really endocrine disrupting. So for women of reproductive age, these things can sometimes mimic estrogen. And so they're turning on these estrogen receptors that aren't supposed to be turned on. And they can just cause so much dysregulation. Microplastics are in our water systems. They're in our salt. They're just like in everything. And so you can't be overwhelmed by all of this. But what I recommend people to do is, look at your personal care products. You can look things up. There's a couple great apps out there. Think Dirty, EWG app. Just start looking at the products that you use and try to use, like now we see like tallow skincare stuff. And then you look at your old cleansing balm and you're like, why did they need 30 things in here to wash my face? And then you're like looking at the purpose of each ingredient. It's just crazy. And then, the big hitters is going to your kitchen and switching out all plastic food storage containers for glass, never heating anything in anything other than glass. You never want to heat plastics or put hot food in plastics. And then same what you drink out of. So get rid of all the plastic water bottles, glass or stainless steel only, because those things are leaching chemicals too. But big ones, like you said, what causes cancer? There's definitely some things in cosmetics that are worrisome. There's definitely some sunscreens out there that are very worrisome. You obviously have to have repeated use of these things. It's not like using it one time is going to cause cancer, but definitely something that people need to be aware of. And I'm a mom of 3 little girls, and trust me, I know how many things we put on our body. So, it's important to me that we think about this.
And what are your thoughts on coffee? Because you also mentioned not to overdo it on caffeine and coffee. Does that affect female hormones especially?
Wow, this is such a good question. Okay. So our liver is in charge. I hate the word detox, but our liver is in charge of processing and metabolizing so many different things that we put in our body. And it's not only things we put in our body, our liver also metabolizes our sex hormones, estrogen. So estrogen gets made by the ovary. Actually, it makes testosterone first, then it gets converted into estrogen. Estrogen goes to our liver after it does what it's supposed to do, and it goes through what we call phase 1 metabolism. And it gets metabolized. And there's a few different genes along this pathway. One is called COMT, and that's part of the methylation pathway. So estrogen gets metabolized, gets methylated, gets put into our GI system, where it ends up going through phase 2, phase 3, where it gets packaged up and basically excreted in the urine or the feces. Now, caffeine and coffee, polyphenols in coffee, also go through this same pathway. So I think of the liver like a bathtub, and the bathtub has a drain at the bottom. And so you're dumping all of these things in the bathtub. And these genes, especially the COMT gene, there's people that have genetic variations in this gene. So you can have a slow COMT gene, or you can have a fast COMT gene. People that have a slow COMT gene probably don't do great with consuming excessive amounts of coffee or caffeine. It can cause a lot of estrogen burden because there's only so many things that can go through these pathways because it's requiring all these different cofactors, magnesium and certain B vitamins and things like that. And so I think there are some people that would maybe do okay with coffee or caffeine, but I think there's some people that have different genetic variations that probably don't do well with those things. And it could be causing hormonal dysregulation because it's clogging up the bathtub. Mm-hmm. And so these are just things we have to be, aware of. The other things with coffee is that, there's a lot of the commercial coffee has mold in it, which could be causing a lot of histamine issues and things like that. And then, of course, if they're using plastic Keurig cups to make their coffee, more microplastics, more chemicals. So there's so many, things that you just have to be aware of when you're consuming these beverages. I was never a coffee drinker. My husband and I, he likes coffee more than I do, but it goes for tea too. Really anything that has polyphenols and caffeine could be clogging up the bathtub.
I don't even like coffee, so I don't worry about it too much. I was just going to comment, not even a question, but when you mentioned the skincare, I heard that carnivores don't burn.
Yeah,
so I always burnt because I was so fair skinned, and I went for an entire week, not a single ounce of sunscreen, and I'm out in the sun all day long for 7 days, and I didn't even get color. It was a little depressing.
We have seen the same thing. I have a lot more melanin in my skin than my husband does. He's very, very light, and he used to burn very easily. So I've never really worn sunscreen most of my life. But I used to slather him up when we would go to the beach or go to Mexico or something like this. And we noticed the exact same thing, is that we were using less sunscreen. And then he's like, I don't even know if I need it. And then we totally stopped using it on him. And same thing. Neither of us burn at all. It's pretty incredible. And I think that is, likely due to the, stability of our membranes. They're not getting, oxidized. There's less free radicals, even with UV exposure. So it's pretty incredible. Yeah. I've heard a lot of people say that.
With the types of fats that carnivores are eating, like really healthy fats for that cell wall. Does that play into that?
Yeah. That's my theory, honestly, is that, when you have a lot of, inflammation, a sunburn is inflammation, right? So you have a UV insult, and the UV insult is causing this oxidative damage and this inflammation, and the inflammation appears as a sunburn. And that's the body's way of dissipating the heat and the oxidative stress that's happening. And so I just think that it's, a lower inflammatory diet, probably changes in the fatty acid layers of the cell membranes, less oxidative stress, I just think it's probably a multitude of things. I don't know that anybody's been able to explain it, but I have heard it repeatedly from people. Oh, I went on a ketogenic diet and I don't sunburn anymore.
That's awesome. I'll wrap up with this last question, Dr. Jamie. I'm just super curious with your practice and with your patients, what are the usual reactions when you bring up nutrition, maybe cutting out the carbs and the junk and eating more animal foods? Do you also prescribe certain diets for your patients?
Yeah, so I do a dietary recall on almost every patient, really. And it gives me just kind of a window into kind of where, they're starting with things. And then depending on what the, primary complaint is, then I start to figure out how we're able to change their diet. It's been really mind-opening for my patients because sometimes I'll bring up the diet and they know they might not be eating perfectly, but when I bring up this idea of a ketogenic diet for things that people don't usually think about, like let's say migraine, the PCOS patients usually have heard of it. They've been in a group or something like that. But things like migraine, menopausal patients, there are definitely benefits to ketogenic diets. When I bring this up, some of them are like, what? Keto? I thought that was just for weight loss. And I think that's just such a stigma out there, is that the ketogenic diet is just for weight loss. And it's definitely much more than that, because we know that ketone bodies act through all these cellular signaling mechanisms, but it's hard to explain that to a patient in a very short amount of time. So I do prescribe low carb and ketogenic diets quite often. And I give patients a food list. I'm like, listen, if it's not on this list, like you're not allowed to eat it. And then, depending on, where they are metabolically, we might be checking glucose. I use CGMs quite a bit, or ketone meters if that's going to be an important part of their therapy too. And I've seen great success with it. I really have. Once patients kind of realize how much control they actually have over these things and that it's not their identity anymore, it's just so much fun as a doctor to have these patients come in and we're de-prescribing medications. And I mean, that's really fulfilling. I mean, most doctors are adding prescriptions. It is just churn and burn medicine. It's not fun because these patients aren't getting healthier. And so I love what I do. And a lot of people wouldn't think they would go to their gynecologist and start hearing nutrition advice. Because some of them come in and they don't know me or what I do. I mean, it's just like a new patient on my schedule. And then months later, they'll be like, oh my God, I found your Instagram.
They're a big deal. Nice.
I was like, I didn't know you were famous. I'm like,
yes.
I'm not famous. I promise you,
In
I am
certain
a
circles.
normal human.
Yes,
So,
yes.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's really fun. And name one medical condition that a patient could be diagnosed with where their diet doesn't affect it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
So
Amazing. That's why we just are all like, this is health first. Yes, weight loss happens, body composition happens, all of those things. But when you go low carb, keto, carnivore, like your health has so much to gain. So this is incredible that you get to be the hands and feet of actually seeing your patients go through that process.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's important for me, to continue to practice. Nothing against any other physician in this space. But, there's a lot of people that aren't practicing, aren't seeing patients on a daily basis. And so, I love being what I call like boots on the ground and really implementing this and learning from my patients too.
Something that I have been incorporating every single day for better sleep and to protect my eyes is wearing blue blockers. And I have all three of their different shades from Bon Charge. This is the design called Magnum. I have the clear computer glasses for everyday wear, the yellow one for medium protection, and the red one for maximum protection. Not only do they improve your quality of sleep, they also help your eyes from feeling strained at the end of the day, especially if you have a career centered around being in front of screens. So if you guys want to check out these awesome blue blockers, I'll make sure to link it down below with my discount code SBGAL. Do share where people can find you, and if you have any exciting announcements for the viewers, please share that too.
Okay. So I'm most active on Instagram at Dr. Fit and Fabulous. I've got Facebook as well. You can go to my website, drfitandfabulous.com. I've got links to my podcast and my book. I have a text message service. There's also an online academy associated with my book called Hard to Kill Academy, where people can go and join. And I do quarterly Q&As, and we've got a Facebook group and fun stuff like that. So I don't know, big announcements. I don't know if I have any secrets I can share. It's been such a crazy last 2 years getting the book out, getting it on Audible. It's been like a major learning experience going through that whole thing. And so I'm speaking at a few conferences this year. So I love to meet people and to hear your stories and see your beautiful faces in person. So I hope I can connect with all of you this year.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. This was an awesome conversation.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
You all can learn from Dr. Jamie Seeman and submit your questions for her in the Steak and Butter Gang. She will be a guest speaker alongside Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Elizabeth Bright, and Ben Azadi. So if you don't want to miss their exclusive live Q&As, make sure to sign up at SBG Meetup or at the links down below in the description box. You will also have access to 8 hours of live Zoom calls every single week with my team of coaches. You can submit your questions, what you need help on, and the coaches will answer in each live Zoom call. In addition to that, you will have access to the full 90-day fat loss program. Just take a look at some of the amazing results our members have gotten by following Coach Raymond and Coach Emily's fat loss program. Again, for more details, just go to sbgmeetup.com or check out the links down below in the description box. Thank you all so much for watching the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you don't want to miss my future videos featuring fellow brilliant guests and experts in this carnivore community. If you're feeling alone and lost on your carnivore journeys, come join the Steak and Butter Gang. We are open 24/7 and offer 8 hours of live Zoom calls every single week just to answer your question. You can ask them anything about the carnivore diet and share what you are struggling with, and they will be ready to help you answer your questions and guide you through whatever obstacles you need to overcome. To get all of the benefits of being a Steak and Butter Gang member, just go to sbgmeetup.com or click the links down below in the description box for more details and to directly join us. And if you're looking for an affordable and clean spot to get all of your home goods, cleaning supplies, personal care items, groceries, and snacks, I highly recommend you all check out Thrive Market. I have linked their URL down below in the description box. All right, I will see you all in my next video. Have a beautiful, beautiful meat-fueled day. SBG out.